Hello, and welcome to JAMA Live. I'm Seth Truger, digital media editor at JAMA Network Open. Of course, if you're following along live, send us your questions or comments on Twitter at JAMA Network Open or on Facebook Live or YouTube in the comment box. Today, we are talking about the effect of high-dose zinc and ascorbic acid supplementation versus usual care on symptom length and reduction among ambulatory patients with SARS-CoV-2 infection, the COVID-A to Z randomized clinical trial. We've got senior author Dr. Milind Desai with us. Welcome, Dr. Desai.
Thank you very much, Dr. Troger, for giving me the opportunity on behalf of my co-investigators to have a conversation about this trial. Thank you.
Well, really glad you joined us. This is great work. Title's a mouthful, but the subtitle is very clever, which I always like. Not surprised from the cardiologists, of course. You guys always have great trial names. So first, if you could just tell us who you are, what kind of work you do, and why you did this study.
So I will start by saying I am a cardiologist, a card-carrying member of the cardiology community. I work at the Cleveland Clinic. I am the director of clinical operations, and I have a few other roles. But my full-time and daytime and nighttime job is as a cardiologist at the Cleveland Clinic. Why we did this study? I ask myself that question a lot too. But why not? At the end of the day, we are clinician scientists and inquisitive by nature. And when the pandemic hit, just like the rest of us, it impacted all of us. And this was a question that came up as part of an initial curbside discussion, and then we thought about the protocol. There was enough interest within the Cleveland Clinic organization about doing a study like this, and we then subsequently set up a study. So from my personal perspective, this is speaking for myself, is there were two things that intrigued me the most about this. One is it was a chance to set up a randomized controlled trial specifically related to supplements. This is not my usual area of research, but when the rubber meets the road, is there something about supplements? Do they work? Do they not? I mean, everybody knows about over-the-counter supplements that people use in colds and common colds and this and that. So it was a chance to do something in a randomized manner. The other, just as important for me, was to the challenge of setting up a process. How would we set up a randomized, how would we execute a trial like this? Under simple, normal circumstances, a randomized control trial is difficult on a good day. Here we are talking about setting up a trial in the middle of a pandemic, exactly around the time when the nation went into a lockdown. So the HIPAA things, how do you obtain informed consent? How do you deliver the drug? How do you keep our research coordinators safe? How do you separate the patients from the research coordinator? Yet, how you do a legitimate study? How do you follow up? Phone calls? How do you analyze the data when everybody's not? So the processes were just as important and intriguing to test. And I think in retrospect, the first time we had a conversation about this was towards the end of March 2020. From there, the first patient in was end of April, beginning of May 2020. From there, less than a year later, we are having this conversation today in February 2021. So to me, that in itself, with all the challenges, was a very big deal that people may or may not appreciate. But from a science perspective, it was, if it works, great. We have a very cheap therapy that we can utilize to reduce the morbidity of the disease. If it doesn't work, then I think it was just as important for all of us to know.
Yeah, this is really great. There was, I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately. There was another trial we published a few months ago that had an editorial about all the challenge of doing basically like a trial during a pandemic, and it's just fascinating. And we're basically only about a year into the pandemic in the U.S., probably less by most measures, and the speed and research thrown behind all this has been fascinating. So great job. But let's get into the nitty gritty a little bit. Just summarize some of the details. You had 4 groups: standard care, and then either vitamin C, zinc, or both. You randomized, had ended up with about 50 to 60 patients in each group. These were adults who were healthy outpatients, right? Not inpatients, which is interesting because every time there's a trial on one of the, I'd say, COVID medications or proposed COVID medications, I guess a lot of play in the press or on certain news channels, there tends to be sorry, I'm just getting a phone call. I got to turn down. There tends to be a lot of, well, this was in hospitalized patients, not outpatients, or this outpatient, not hospitalized patients, or this was in prevention. So, of course, we can't do everything with every study. But so there's healthy adult outpatients with COVID. And then the sample size at first glance look a bit small, but you stop for futility. So Can you talk about that?
Yes. So thank you. So basically, our goal was, like you said, rightfully so, one size is not going to fit all. One trial is not going to, especially when we were setting it up, we had no idea what to expect in terms of the pandemic, its severity, et cetera. This was in the early aspects of it. So we clearly wanted to focus on the early aspect of disease, or early aspect or mild aspect of disease. Certainly not hospitalized patients, certainly not folks who ended up needing to lie prone on a ventilator, or some of the things that we have learned in the last few months. And what when I think about a process or a group of patients, I think about the pyramid, and we wanted to look at the base of the pyramid, which has the highest volume of patients. We know that, yes, COVID has a lot of patients that end up in the hospital, but that's still the number of hospitalized patients and number of patients who end up dying is a magnitude lower than all the patients who are impacted at home and who end up missing work due to non-hospitalizable illness or quarantine, what have you. So we wanted to study, because from a public health perspective, at least in my brain, the way I look at it, if this works, if it reduces morbidity of disease by reducing the duration of symptoms, then that population would be a much larger base of the pyramid. And so that was the rationale behind. And besides, we were looking at over-the-counter supplements, essentially. So, any expectation that it was going to change the world in a advanced lung disease prone intubated patient, that would be sort of silly on our parts anyway. So we wanted to look at it that way. We wanted to look at that population, and it was, we calculated, again, the sample size calculation was also, yes, there was some educated guess, but the key word there is it's an educated guess. So we wanted to study we thought that based on the power calculation, it would be around 120 or 130 patients in each arm to show the difference. While we did not put it in the initial protocol, but it was always in discussions that, we need to see and evaluate we should consider doing what you call an interim analysis. And that's essentially what we ended up doing to see if, if there were trends suggesting that there may be utility in continuing, we were planning on doing that with loss of alpha and everything, the statistical jargon. But it was very clear, talking to our statisticians and the DSMB, that we can continue till we met the number space. We reached more than 500 patients like we had originally planned. But at the end, what we were strongly advised that the end result, that this was going to be a futile trial. So, and besides, at this, and given the logistical challenges of doing this, given the perceived futility of doing this, so it was probably a wise decision on our part and on the part of the DSMB to recommend that we stop the trial prematurely when we did.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. One of the studies we talked about months ago on the show here was about how 1 in 4 COVID therapeutic trials and clinical trials right now are on chloroquine. So we spend so much time, effort, and resources and research infrastructure, unringing that bell. And those are patients who can't get enrolled in other trials for the most part. We're basically, yes, there are lots of people with COVID who get into trials, but when you get to any institution, the trials are basically competing with each other for participants, as I'm sure you know. So, and not only that, so the duty to kind of everybody to make sure we're putting the research infrastructure in the best place possible, but also, even though these are safe over-the-counter supplements, any exposing them to patients to any risk in a trial is, if there's no good coming out of the trial because it's fatal, isn't worth it. I'm not a bioethicist, but.
Exactly. I mean, and you are absolutely right. And one thing you talked about, you touched on, I think is important, is, during the height of the COVID mania, I still think we are still in the middle of COVID mania. It's just that we have gotten used to looking at the outrageous numbers, and we have gotten better in some aspects at what you call treating these patients. We have a playbook now. But yes, there were a ton of trials being floated around, at least in terms of ideas, and all these little trials where they were competing. You are absolutely right, competing for patients. And besides, at the end of the day, a lot of patients. I mean, there's a lot of skepticism. There's all kinds of the media biases and it was insane times where we were living in, where patients would. They didn't want to participate. A lot of patients did not want to participate. I mean, we underestimated how many patients were unwilling to participate for various reasons. I mean, and so, which is why I think, in fact, I will tell you, at one point of time, there was even a conversation that if there was another similar type trial, then we would share the common standard of care group. So, one trial would go this way, one trial would go this way, the common standard of care group. Mercifully, that didn't happen. It would have been an interesting conversation with the journal editors if that were to be the case. But be it as it may, it was brought up and discussed as a potential scenario.
Interesting. That's really fascinating. So looking at figure 3, you can see it's the Kaplan-Meier curve of the endpoints. It's just really, the curves are almost exactly the same. There's really no difference between how patients get in each care. There's a little separation, but it's not significant. And that's at 4 weeks, which is pretty impressive. So can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah. So thank you very much. So essentially, and one of the things. And maybe this is the naive cardiologist in me. I'm just a simple cardiologist. But one of the first things that we got creative about was developing this endpoint. And it's clear this was not planned as an outcome study. So what we wanted to do was I think we got creative, and each patient would serve as his or her own control group, for the lack of a better term. So if you think, we created this symptom-based semi-continuous score. So each symptom, first the 4 CDC symptoms, and then we also expanded to a 12 CDC symptom. So each score got a 0 to 3, no symptoms to severe symptoms. And in the first iteration, everybody got a score between 0 and 12. And the primary endpoint, our focus was, does this help reduce morbidity of disease? Could this, because, to me, the other allure was, if this is a positive trial, and if it significantly reduces the morbidity of disease by reducing the days, then the bigger analysis would have been cost to society, or money saved for society by reducing the number of work days or what have you. We could have gone along those lines. So our plan was, the bigger thing was, to me, the more innovative thing was how we developed the primary endpoint, which is 50% reduction of the symptom score of a given patient. So each patient served as his or her own control. So we were not comparing patient X to patient Y. We were comparing patient, how long did it take for the patient to reduce the symptom? And essentially, what we found was that the amount of time it took to reach 50% reduction in the symptoms was very similar, as you nicely pointed out. The Kaplan-Meier curves look exactly the same in that. And so, there was enough of a spread that the curves overlapped each other.
Yeah. And if you look at figure 2, it shows all the patients together, and basically the rate of grading the mild symptoms is about flat across the whole study period, but you see moderate symptoms is yellow, and that just kind of drops over the course of a week and a half. And the blue also, the serious symptoms also starts low but drops too. And then figure 3 again shows that all 4 groups did that at the same time. So I don't want to do too much time here. So the some of the critiques we've heard from people who've read the study and responded to it were, one is the dose of zinc, that 50 milligrams zinc gluconate is only 7 milligrams of elemental zinc. Can you speak to that at all?
Yes. So that was interesting. That took me by surprise. Again, me, the simple cardiologist,
Sure.
and we did have a conversation with our chief investigational pharmacist, who was also on the DSMB, John Petridge, and he did confirm with us that this was not 7 milligrams of elemental. It was indeed 50 milligrams of elemental zinc. So that conspiracy theory that is floating around is just that. It is a conspiracy theory. We did give 50 milligrams of zinc and 8 grams of vitamin C. Again, remember, the big picture here was we had to have a balance. And I've seen the comments where somebody's talking about giving IV continuous vitamin C. I mean, this is a outpatient study in the middle of a pandemic of mildly sick patients. Which mildly sick patient wants to have a IV infusion of continuous vitamin C? So, and the choice of dose was done as a delicate balance of being cognizant of the fact that patients are outpatients, not very sick. So we did not want to create a group of patients that had more side effects to the supplements versus their actual symptoms. Or imagine, put yourself in the shoes. You're feeling miserable, and then you add more fuel to the fire by overdosing them.
Right. And similarly, I think, and this has come up with every COVID trial I've seen basically on that's been negative for these type of things, is this the right combination? And a lot of people commented that, do we need an ionophore, like a hydroxychloroquine, in addition to zinc or vitamin C?
So again, in this study, we did not test that. So, all I can say is all we can do is we can speculate about that. We discussed the business of ionophore, and at that time, from a logistics perspective, from an IRB, regulatory, all kinds of perspective, it would have been a completely different ballgame. So our goal was, do standard supplements help reduce the burden of disease? Now, at the end of the day, in all fairness, when people are promoting supplemental therapies, they are going to the neighborhood pharmacy and picking up whatever supplements there are available and taking them with the hopes that it helps reduce symptoms or duration of disease, what have you. They are not taking them with ionophores. They are not taking them intravenously. They are not taking them at 10 times the dose that is available at a neighborhood pharmacy. So, we wanted to mimic something that is, real life, essentially. And one thing I will make the comment, I've thought and reflected on this very often. In medicine, all of medicine, not medicine surgery, in medicine, we take medications to help us feel better or help us live longer. Okay, so that has been the burden of proof for anything that we take. We generally don't take, and in supplements, the expected burden is almost like, what's the harm? Take it because it doesn't hurt you. I mean, to me, taking something because it may or may not hurt me is not the same burden of proof as take something because it makes me live longer or feel better. So, I mean, that's just me, the cardiologist speaking.
Sure. So I guess one last question, just because you've delved into this a bit in the science. So ignoring, the actual snake oil salespeople without scruples, people have money on the line here, there seems to still be a sizable chunk of the population who is very heavily invested in magic fixes for COVID. That it's zinc or it's hydroxychloroquine or it's ivermectin is the new one, or why is there so much enthusiasm for this from people who don't necessarily have anything to gain?
Well, look. Thinking outside the box is always good. Okay. And there's in my opinion, if there's a plausible theory, then it should be tested rigorously. And if it works, it works. Okay. I mean, a lot of people, what ends up happening is there is some mechanistic plausibility. It works on on neutrophils. The other one is an antioxidant. And we have seen this in a small observational study or in an animal study. So that's why it works in humans. Well, we have to test it. And I'm all for enthusiasm, okay? Without enthusiasm, science would not evolve. The day we become less enthusiastic, we come to a standstill. So I'm all for science. I'm all for enthusiasm. I'm all for pushing things forward, but in a right way. That's what I mentioned. The first thing in my little brain was, this is a simple supplement. If it works, great. We will be doing a huge public service, but we'd be doing equal amount of public service if we are able to prove that it doesn't work.
Absolutely. Well, excellent point. So really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. This is a really great study, important questions, adds more to the things that don't work for COVID battle, unfortunately, but as you said, important questions. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Great. Really appreciate it. Before we end today, I will note, so we have decided that this is going to be our last episode. We're going to stop JAMA Live, at least for now. This has been a great run. We're going, I think, over 2 years now. We changed around a few times. I had a couple of different partners. But we're with a great crew. Things have been great. This has been fun for me. It's been educational. It's been professionally very satisfying. But for a lot of reasons, we decided there were a better place to put our resources, specifically the video team, who does fantastic work across the JAMA network, doing videos with Dr. Fauci, new CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, and many others. And it's been great. I want to thank everyone who's involved: Eric Butkus, Elena Gubite, Emily Ling, Iman Ali, Jonathan Laxmana, Diana Belandi, Yolanda Davis, and Marilyn Fergalak. I'm sure I've forgotten people, and I'm so sorry. Again, thank you all for your work. This has been a ton of fun. As far as I know, these episodes will continue to live on forever on YouTube. So you can all watch and have fun and see how many times I change my hair and shave my beard for COVID, and how much I touch my face despite trying not to since a year ago when the pandemic started. So thank you all. Read this article and more at JAMANetworkOpen.com, where it's free and open access. New articles every weekday at 10 a.m. And that's it. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you.